welcome to All 24 News World News program coming to you live from Algiers, and up next are the top stories. In 24 hours, occupation forces conducted 57 raids on Lebanon, killing 60. Lebanese Prime Minister Mikati called the attack on UNIFIL soldiers a crime, and Hezbollah supported deploying the Lebanese army to border while targeting the Zionist military sites. Guterres calls UNIFIL shooting a violation of international humanitarian law. UNIFIL labels targeting of forces a serious violation of international law, and UN confirms over 100 medical workers killed in Lebanon raids. Also in our news, Algeria warns that the Zionist aggression will extend beyond Lebanon, stressing that inaction invites further destabilization. It calls on the Security Council to uphold international peace while evacuating hundreds of its nationals from Lebanon, and pledges to monitor the community's situation in the region. And 61 martyrs in 4 new Zionist massacres in Gaza Strip within 24 hours, along the casualties from the occupation airstrikes. Thousands of families face severe water and food shortages in northern Gaza due to the ongoing siege, while the World Health Organization confirms a lack of health services in the region. And Libyan Presidential Council consults with African Union delegation, reaffirming EU support for national reconciliation and stability, with a commitment to being a strategic partner. Stay tuned to the details after the break. Hello again and welcome back to the details. At least 60 people were killed and 168 injured in 57 raids on Lebanon cities, raising the death toll to over 2,200 with 10,300 wounded. The Lebanese government reported over 9,580 attacks with 1,032 centers for the displaced, more than 800 at full capacity, and 87,000 people displaced. The ministry's Health Emergency Operations Center confirmed that airstrikes on Beirut killed 22 and injured 117. On Thursday, Zionist forces bombed an 88-story building in Talat and Nuwairi and 4-story building in Bast al-Fawqa, causing the latter to collapse completely. 10 Lebanese were killed and others injured on Friday in Zionist bombings in southern Lebanon. The Lebanese National News Agency reported that 5 people died in a raid on a house in Budai in Baalbek region, with several others injured. In Nabatiya, Zionist aircraft destroyed a building in Jabshid, killing 4. Additionally, a woman in the town of Sur died from injuries sustained in an earlier raid. Five Lebanese were killed in a Zionist raid on the town of Budai in the central Bekaa, Zala district. Local sources reported that the airstrike targeted a house, and Lebanese civil defense teams have since transferred the bodies, with efforts to recover the wounded still ongoing. A Zionist Merkava tank targeted a UN peacekeeping tower on the Sur Naqoura road near a Lebanese army checkpoint, injuring soldiers from the Sri Lankan battalion and damaging the headquarters. Many countries around the globe condemned the attack, including Lebanese Prime Minister Najib Mikati, calling them a crime. Nabil Hazini reports.
In a moment of deep concern for his nation, Lebanese Prime Minister Najib Mikati has condemned the recent occupation's attacks on UN peacekeeping forces. In this time of turmoil, he emphasized that the safety of Lebanon is his top priority, standing firm in his commitment to protect peace and stability in his country.
The attack on UNIFIL forces by Israel is a crime condemned by us and is directed at the international community, whose sanctity is being violated and whose existence is being threatened by targeting the United Nations security forces. The safety of my country is my priority right now, as well as stopping the bloodshed and destruction. This is what matters to me, and this is what I'm working towards.
Legal experts have said that the recent occupation's attacks on the UN interim force in Lebanon represent a clear violation of international law. On Friday, new explosions rocked the peacekeeping forces' headquarters in southern Lebanon, injuring 2 peacekeepers. This incident follows an earlier attack by occupation's forces on the same position, which also targeted central Beirut, raising serious concerns about the safety and stability in the region.
This is a serious development, and UNIFIL reiterates that the safety and security of UN personnel and property must be guaranteed, and that the inviolability of UN premises must be respected at all times.
The strikes intensified as occupation forces ramped up their heavy airstrikes across Lebanon, coupled with a ground invasion along its borders. On Thursday night, at least 22 people were killed and 117 wounded in airstrikes that targeted 2 areas in central Beirut. This assault is the deadliest on the city in over a year of conflict.
Hezbollah announced it targeted multiple Zionist military sites in northern occupied Palestine. They bombed the Abad site on the Lebanon-Palestine border with a guided missile and struck gatherings of soldiers in the Zevulun area, Iftah Barracks, and Kfar Sold settlement. Additionally, Hezbollah launched a drone attack on the Air Defense Command base in Kiryat Eliezer near occupied Haifa. Hezbollah's Mohammed Afif stated that the Israeli occupation is concealing its losses and emphasized that the battle is still in its early stages. He asserted that the resistance remains strong, preventing any advance by the occupation. Additionally, Hezbollah denied Reuters reports about choosing new military leadership, reaffirming its readiness for a long-term war of attrition. In a press conference on Friday, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres condemned the occupation forces for firing on UNIFIL troops in southern Lebanon, calling it a violation of international humanitarian law. At the Asian summit in Laos, he urged the Zionist entity to stop these attacks, warning that escalating conflicts in the Middle East pose a serious threat to global security and stressing the need to prevent a comprehensive war.
Obviously, I condemn the fact that there was shooting against the UN premise, wounding 2 peacekeepers, which is a violation of international humanitarian law. Peacekeepers must be protected by all parties of the conflict, and what has happened is obviously condemnable.
Similarly, UNIFIL called the targeting of its forces a serious violation of international humanitarian law. In a statement on Friday, UNIFIL confirmed that its headquarters in Naqoura was bombed for the second time in 48 hours, along with collapses near the Blue Line in Labuna. The UN force described these attacks as dangerous and called for respect for the sanctity of UN buildings.
These attacks constitute serious violation of the obligations of Israel under United Nations Security Council Resolution 1701 and under humanitarian international law. This is a serious development, and UNIFIL reiterates that the safety and security of UN personnel and property must be guaranteed, and that the inviolability of UN premises must be respected at all times. Any deliberate attack on peacekeepers is a grave violation of international humanitarian law.
The targeting of UNIFIL forces by the Zionist occupation extends a criminal policy that began in Palestine and continues in Lebanon. This strategy aims to destroy UN structures in the Middle East, undermining peace efforts and obstructing relief operations. Yasin Erkti has more.
The current situation in the Middle East has been marked by significant escalation in Israeli aggression, particularly through the targeting of UN agencies and their staff. This strategy, which began in Palestine and extended into Lebanon, aims to dismantle the infrastructure of the United Nations and undermine humanitarian and peace efforts in the region. The recent Zionist attack against the United Nations interim force in Lebanon adds to a troubling pattern of violence. Observers note that the situation in both Gaza and Beirut remains dire, with ongoing destruction and violations of international laws and standards. The Israeli occupation's attacks have sparked widespread condemnation from various countries and international organizations, deeming them unacceptable. The President of the European Council, Charles Michel, criticized the assault as irresponsible, stressing the necessity of adhering to international humanitarian law.
An attack against a UN peace mission is not responsible, it's not acceptable, and that's why indeed we call on Israel and we call on all sides to fully respect the international humanitarian law.
Indonesian Foreign Minister Retno Marsudi called the attack a terrorist act and urged the UN Security Council to take concrete measures to uphold its credibility.
This attack is a terrorist act by Israel against peacekeepers and the international community. Indonesia urges the United Nations Security Council to ensure the respect of its mandate by taking concrete steps to maintain the credibility of the Security Council.
This targeting of UNIFIL exposes the underlying doctrine of the Israeli occupation, which prioritizes violence and the eradication of any potential sources of peace or humanitarian relief. While millions have been displaced in both Palestine and Lebanon due to these aggressive actions, which include numerous atrocities against UN structures since the beginning of Israel's multi-front offensive in the region, the situation continues to worsen amid international community's calls for urgent action to protect humanitarian efforts and restore peace in this volatile region.
The United Nations announced on Friday that over 100 medical and emergency workers have been killed in Lebanon due to Zionist raids since October of last year. Ravina Shamdasani, spokesperson for the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, highlighted that these fatalities occurred mainly in the south. The Commissioner General of UNRWA stated on Friday that most Palestinian refugees in southern Lebanon have fled due to escalating aggression. Lazzarini associated this displacement to mass exodus in Gaza and noted that the agency continues to support the most vulnerable groups.
Are now displaced for the first time. Now, that's part, unfortunately, of their plight. But if you compare with what happened also in Gaza recently, you might have heard me describing how people are constantly being moved like pinballs. And one of the fear is that we replicate a situation similar to the one we have seen until now in Gaza.
Algeria's UN representative stated that the occupation's ongoing invasion violates Lebanon's sovereignty and territorial integrity. He warned that the Security Council's inaction could embolden further violations and destabilize the region. More on this story with Miriam Zian.
As the crisis in the Middle East deepens, Algeria's UN ambassador Hamad Ben Jama took the stage at an emergency Security Council session on Lebanon's escalating situation, calling for an immediate ceasefire in both Gaza and Lebanon as the key to restoring peace and stability in the region.
Algeria reaffirmed that the only path to ensuring stability in Lebanon and peace in the broader region is the full and immediate implementation of UN Security Resolution 1701.
During his plea, the Algerian diplomat stressed that the Zionist aggression would not stop at Lebanon, warning that their actions could extend beyond Gaza and the West Bank.
We have previously warned that the military action of the Israeli occupying power will not be confined to Gaza and to the West Bank. Today, We reiterate our warning. Israeli aggression will not stop at Lebanon.
He also wondered when the Security Council would assume its responsibilities for maintaining international peace and security, as the Zionist entity continues to benefit from impunity.
The violation of Lebanon sovereignty and territorial integrity without serious reaction from the Security Council only emboldens further violations of international law and further instability in the whole region.
Top UN officials and Security Council members, including Mr. Benjama, roundly condemned the Israeli attacks on UN peacekeepers from the UNIFIL mission in Lebanon, which patrols the blue line between Israel and Lebanon.
Algeria highly values and commends the pivotal role of UNIFIL in safeguarding regional stability. We condemn the Israeli forces for deliberate firing on 3 positions used by UNIFIL, injuring 2 of our peacekeepers.
He concluded his remarks by noting that more than 1 million Lebanese have been internally displaced, with hundreds of thousands forced to flee to neighboring Syria, while reiterating Algeria's solidarity with Lebanon and its unwavering support in the face of the Zionist barbaric aggression.
306 Algerian nationals arrived in Algiers this morning as part of the second evacuation operation due to the escalating Zionist aggression in Lebanon. The voluntary evacuation organized by Algerian authorities may be followed by additional operations if necessary, in line with President Abdelmajid Tebboun's directives to support the Algerian community abroad.
Thank you to the President, the government and to every Algerian. No matter how small, they did not fall short in supporting us. A special thanks to the Algerian embassy who worked tirelessly alongside us, and we too were exhausted. But thank God we have come out of this crisis. In the end, may God bless you with continued security and safety, and returning to the homeland is always the best.
I would love to thank our President, Abdelmajid Tebboune. Really, our embassy in Lebanon, they did the best to take us from there. It was really a disaster and very scary, the bombing, really a great job to take all the Algerians from Lebanon in a safe way and to go to our country, Algeria.
I want to thank the President of Algeria, Ammi Tebboune. He saved us. He gave us tickets to go to a plane to Algeria, and we definitely said yes because there was war in the country and we wanted to go there.
Rashid Maddah, Director General of Consular Affairs, announced a crisis cell to monitor the Algerian community amid the Zionist aggression on Gaza. He reassured nationals in Gaza about evacuation efforts and affirmed the authorities' commitment to facilitating the return in line with President Abdelmajid Tebboun's directives.
Following President Abdelmajid Tebboun's instructions, a crisis cell was immediately set up at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in response to Israeli aggression on Gaza. The cell has been monitoring the situation of Algerians across the region, with close coordination from embassies in Cairo, Beirut, Damascus and Amman to assess evacuation needs. This is the second successful operation of evacuating 306 Algerians and their non-Algerian spouses from Lebanon, following the first one in August. Special attention is being given to Algerian citizens stranded in Gaza, with ongoing efforts to evacuate them and alleviate their suffering. Algeria remains committed to its citizens abroad as part of the President's pledges, ensuring their safety and support in both difficult and joyful times.
In a related matter, the Algerian Ministry of Foreign Affairs confirmed its readiness to organize further evacuation operations of foreign nationals in Lebanon if needed. In a statement on Friday, the ministry emphasized mobilizing all resources for successful evacuations and reaffirmed its commitment to support citizens abroad. It expressed hope for a swift improvement in the situation in Palestine and Lebanon, wishing for restored security and stability. For more international news after the break. Zionist forces committed 4 new massacres in Gaza, resulting in 61 martyrs and 231 wounded in the last 24 hours. The death toll since October 7th has risen to 42,126, with 98,117 wounded. Palestinian sources also reported 6 martyrs' bodies recovered from Zionist raids in Rafah, southern Gaza Strip, with the bodies arriving at the European hospital in Khan Yunis. A Palestinian was killed and others injured when an occupation drone bombed near a sports club in Jabalia. A drone also fired on citizens in Shujaiya neighborhood, killing an elderly man. And a missile strike in a Zaytun neighborhood killed another elderly man, with soldiers firing on citizens on the Jalet Street. Meanwhile, Palestinians in northern Gaza Strip launched urgent appeals for relief and rescue, along with their children, from death by hunger and thirst. For about 2 weeks, the distribution of relief aid has stopped in most areas of northern Gaza due to the occupation army preventing the entry of aid trucks provided by international and local humanitarian organizations. The World Health Organization warned that health services in northern Gaza have collapsed and are almost non-extinct as the occupation army continues to block relief missions to area, hindering treatment for the injured. In a post on X platform, the UN body stated that at least 24,090 people need immediate rehabilitation, prompting calls for a ceasefire to rebuild health services. The UN officials expressed concern that Zionist attacks and evacuation orders in northern Gaza threaten the upcoming polio vaccination campaign. Rick Peppercorn, the WHO representative, warned that these orders could impede access for hospitals and vaccination teams, delaying safe vaccination efforts.
So we renew our request for all parties of the conflict to implement this necessary humanitarian policies in Gaza for the second round. Particularly critical as new evacuation orders in the north of Gaza are threatening access to hospitals and protection of health facilities and health and community workers. The vaccination teams, the parents, the children, of course, the children must be protected and allowed to conduct to make sure that the campaigns can conduct safely.
After destroying cities and taking thousands of lives, the Zionist entity has robbed Palestinian children of their education. Yet, Maryam Abu Raziq, a dedicated teacher, continues to give lessons in a makeshift tent. Here's Sofian Kanturi with the full story.
For the second year in a row, school children in Gaza are attending classes amid destruction, while the school year started weeks ago in other parts of the world. Many students have only experienced education thanks to devoted teachers, like 23-year-old Maryam Abu Rizq, who continues to teach children in Khan Yunis despite ongoing violence and hardship.
We are surrounded by destruction. I make my way to the educational tent, surrounded by debris in all directions, so you can imagine how teachers feel when they go there with rubble everywhere. I never would have imagined this happening to beautiful Gaza. Our minds cannot absorb the extent of the destruction in Gaza, especially in our camp, Khan Yunis.
Every day, Maryam navigates a dangerous path to reach a makeshift tent that serves as her classroom. She's determined to provide education, believing that her lessons give the children purpose, structure, and routine amidst their daily chaos. In a war-torn city where life often feels meaningless, this improvised classroom gathers dozens of displaced children, aiming to instill a sense of normalcy and belonging, similar to what schools presents for children everywhere.
The situation is difficult, especially for the students. They have the desire and motivation to learn, but it is challenging for them. Most students tend to queue for food, water, or to collect sticks to start a fire. But they have the desire and ambition to learn, which is why this tent has been set up to teach the children. We teach from 1st to 6th grade, covering Arabic, English, and mathematics.
For over a year now, the future of these children, trapped in seemingly endless aggression, have been more uncertain than ever. The resilience of educators like Miriam shines a light in darkness, but the challenges they face remain formidable.
The Houthi group in Yemen bombed a military target of Zionist occupation in the occupied Jaffa area using drones. On Friday, the group announced it targeted a military gathering of Zionist forces in Eilat with forced summit for drones, emphasizing its support for the Palestinian and Lebanese peoples until the occupation is defeated. To a different matter now, hundreds in Morocco protested after Friday prayers against the Zionist occupation's crimes in Palestine and Lebanon. Organized by the Moroccan Committee to support the national or nation's issues, protesters raised Palestinian and Lebanese flags and demanded the Akhnouch government abandon agreements they deemed humiliating. Sahrawi women activists in Bujdur celebrated the European Court of Justice's decision to cancel EU-Morocco agreements involving Western Sahara's resources. They condemned Morocco's illegal exploitation and reaffirmed their belief in eventual victory and independence for the Sahrawi people.
We, like all Sahrawi activists, welcome the decision. This decision that I'm talking about did not come in vain, but rather came about through the steadfastness of the Sahrawis, the steadfastness of the Sahrawi state, and the diplomacy of the Western Sahrawi state in international forums. All this is thanks to the efforts of the Sahrawis and the efforts of the Sahrawi unity. We welcome the decision of the European Court of Justice, which met with the agreement of the European Union.
The third World Youth Forum in solidarity with Western Sahara opened in Bilbao, featuring over 200 participants from 10 countries. Running until Sunday, the forum focuses on youth issues and provides a platform for Sahrawis to share experiences and raise awareness about the Western Sahara conflict, especially in light of the recent European Court of Justice ruling.
This global youth forum in Bilbao, Basque Country, comes at a crucial time for the Sahrawi people's struggle and resilience. It coincides with the European Court's decision to annul the trade agreement between Morocco and the EU, reaffirming the Western Sahara and Morocco are two distant entities. This highlights the ongoing decolonization issue, emphasizing the need for a free and fair referendum for the Sahrawi people. The EU decisions marks a key step in their fight, especially concerning Western Sahara's natural resources, and this forum strengthens international solidarity with their cause for freedom and independence.
Moving on to Tunisia now, Independent High Authority for Elections announced today the final results of the October 6th presidential elections. No appeals were filed against the preliminary results so far. The authorities' council will ratify the final results at a press conference at 7:30 p.m. Tunisian time. Candidate Qais Said secured a second presidential term with 90.65% of the vote. The Libyan Presidential Council met with an African Union delegation today to discuss the national reconciliation process, its challenges and solutions. President Mohamed Al-Manfi and Council member Abdullah Lafi welcomed the delegation led by Mauritania's President Mohamed Wald Sheikh Al-Ghazouani along with the Chairman of the African Union Commission, Moussa Faki. Al-Manfi praised the meeting in Tripoli emphasizing Africa's commitment to supporting Libya during this critical time. The African Union reiterated its support for Libya during a meeting in Tripoli today, led by Mauritanian President Mohamed Ould Sheikh Al-Ghazouani. The latter emphasized that Libya's stability is vital for the entire continent and confirmed the AU's commitment to aiding Libya in achieving national reconciliation and sustainable development.
نحن نعتبر صراحة أن هذا البلد
We frankly consider that this country has a leading strategic position in the African continent and in the Arab and Islamic nation, and has always played and continues to play a pivotal role in strengthening security and stability on the continent and at the international level. This gives it a great right when its circumstances require that all the brothers, especially the African brothers, rush to bring together some of the Libyan brothers' viewpoints. I believe that this is our duty to work together, and in this meeting we hope that this will be part of our duty.
African Union Commission Chairperson Moussa Faki stated that the EU will continue to support Libya in achieving security and stability, emphasizing that national reconciliation is essential for building a sustainable future of the country.
زيارتنا اليوم لليبيا لطرابلس.
Our visit today to Libya is one of support and solidarity with you. The Libyan people, as we all know, have always had a significant and respected place in Africa. It is our duty to stand by Libya and the Libyan people. I must reiterate that it is our obligation to assist Libya. This is my third visit as chairperson of the African Union Commission, and thankfully the situation has greatly improved. We have tasked ourselves with the reconciliation file because, as you mentioned, there is no major dispute between the Libyan people, only political differences. It is our duty to engage with the political and social actors to unify Libya and its institutions and restore its renowned and respected place.
The Libyan National Oil Corporation reported that oil production has surpassed 1 million barrels per day, returning to pre-central bank crisis levels. This increase follows the reopening of oil fields and ports after a new central bank governor was appointed. Before the production halt, Tripoli produced around 1.3 million barrels per day. At a meeting in Ashgabat, Turkmenistan, Russian President Vladimir Putin and Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian praised their strong bilateral relations. Putin called Iran-Russia ties a priority for Moscow, while Pezeshkian described them as strategic and sincere. Mohammed Khater reports.
Attending the International Forum of Interrelation of Times and Civilizations held in Ashgabat, Turkmenistan, Russian President Vladimir Putin reaffirmed during his first meeting with Iran's new president, Masoud Pezeshkian, the importance of the special ties between Moscow and Tehran. Putin said relations with Iran are a priority for his country, adding that they are progressing very successfully.
I'm very glad, dear Mr. President, that there is an opportunity to meet you personally and discuss our current issues. Relations with Iran are a priority for us, and they are developing very successfully.
Last month, Pezeshkian committed his country to sustain deeper ties with Russia to counter Western sanctions. He emphasized the growing cooperation between Iran and Russia, adding that the will of the two countries' top leaders must be accelerated to strengthen these relations.
I'm happy to have this opportunity to be here and meet with you. Our relations in the cultural, economic and social spheres are stronger and improving day by day. To this end, and taking into account the will shown by the supreme leader of the Islamic Revolution and the belief that we have in our relations, we should see them becoming stronger and improving. We have many opportunities now. We should help each other in many areas. Our viewpoints and positions in the world are much closer to each other than to those of others.
Meanwhile, the two presidents welcomed the convergence of their positions regarding the latest developments on the international scene, jointly denouncing Western support for the Zionist entity and Ukraine. Russia and Iran have seen their interests threatened by the Western Bloc and their territory militarily affected on several occasions.
At a meeting in Poland, leaders of the Arlos group reiterated their unwavering support for Ukraine in its conflict with Russia, emphasizing that aid should continue regardless of the U.S. presidential election outcome. The Polish president called for accelerating Ukraine's EU accession efforts. Moving on to Russia-Ukraine file now, a Russian attack in southern Ukraine's Odessa region on Friday resulted in 4 deaths and 10 injuries. Local officials reported that a ballistic missile struck a 2-story building. Meanwhile, the Russian Defense Ministry announced control of 2 towns in Donetsk region and reported repelling 5 Ukrainian attacks on the Kursk axis. It also stated that Russian Air Force targeted Ukrainian forces in 19 towns in Kursk and 14 in Sumy. A month before the U.S. presidential elections, the race intensifies. This Friday, former President Barack Obama leveraged his oratory skills to rally support against Donald Trump and advocate for Democrat Kamala Harris. Speaking in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, the American left's icon cautioned voters about the likelihood of a close election. More international news in the News in Brief.
Hundreds protested in Accra, Ghana on Friday against illegal gold mining, which has surged due to rising global gold prices. The practice poses health risks and environmental damage, becoming a key issue ahead of the December 7th elections. Protesters delivered a petition to the president's office during an environmental prayer walk following labor unions' plans for a strike that were partially called off after government commitments.
A record-breaking series of wildfires have ravaged Peru over the past few weeks, burning through grasslands, dry forests, coastal areas, and even parts of the Amazon. In northern Peru, spectacled bears fleeing the flames entered nearby towns, where some were tragically shot by scared residents. In the southern Amazon, jaguars were found charred and lifeless on trees, while grasslands and wetlands crucial for water storage were reduced to ashes.
An oil tanker, the Anika, caught fire off northern Germany's Baltic Sea coast early Friday, with all 7 crew members safely rescued. Multiple vessels and firefighting teams were deployed to tackle the blaze in Mecklenburg Bay. The 73-meter tanker carried about 640 tons of oil, is anchored and connected to a tugboat. A rescue vessel later approached to access the burning engine room, and the tanker will be towed to the port of Rostock once the fire is extinguished.
Hurricane Milton tore through Florida Wednesday night, leaving a trail of devastation. Flooded streets, uprooted trees, and destroyed homes and buildings are just some of the destruction left in its wake. The powerful storm made landfall as a Category 3 hurricane, and by Thursday morning, first responders and residents who stayed behind began to assess the full extent of the damage.
And finally, to a lighter note, South Korean author Han Kang won the 2024 Nobel Prize in Literature for her intense poetic prose that confronts historical traumas. She is the first South Korean laureate debuting with poetry in 1993 and prose in 1995.
The Nobel Prize in Literature for 2024 is awarded to South Korean author Han Kang for her intense poetic prose that confronts historical traumas and exposes the fragility of human life.
It's very hard to describe, as I think it always is with the really good writers, because it's quite original. I would say it's quite easy to get into, and it's very, very precise. And the violence is always present, but so is tenderness, and so is the friendship, and so is the searching for contact and communication and human dignity.
That wraps up our news program for tonight, dear viewers. Thank you for watching, and bye for now.